The Gates Foundation will open a new office here in Singapore, its first in Southeast Asia and the 12th worldwide. Founded by philanthropist Bill and Melinda Gates, the Singapore office aims to deepen support in areas like health and innovation in the region. Further details on job opportunities and operations will be shared once timelines are finalized. Nasyrah Rohim tells us more.
Global leaders are gathered here at the annual Ecosperity Week with one goal in mind: how to drive the green transition in Asia. Singapore is at the heart of it, and a main reason why the Gates Foundation is deepening its presence here with the support of the Economic Development Board.
We're also now getting connected to the universities, so we can find, we have a thing called a Fellows Program that's funded by Enterprise Singapore, Temasek and ourselves, to get seed money out to the people who have breakthrough ideas. I think we need to bring all of the grid modeling technology and say, okay, let's make sure we have people who can look at the challenges throughout Asia using the latest tools here.
Despite geopolitical headwinds, escalating trade wars and the US government funding cut for non-profits, Mr. Gates says Singapore is a great partner in the climate movement.
We are, in many ways...
I do think this current trend where there's a little less cooperation going on, I don't think that's a permanent thing. I think we're going to, the US or the, we're going to see how that works against us and come around on that, maybe not overnight. But you should know there's a lot of commitment to this cause in the United States.
Temasek CEO Dylan Pillay also adds that untapped opportunities lie in sustainable financing.
What's actually needed more so, especially in our part of the world in Southeast Asia, is to convert marginally bankable projects into bankable projects. I think that should be the focus. Whether that involves concessionary capital or whether it involves corporate finance solutions, we need to bring the best of what we can offer together so that the reality of transition towards a greener future can be achieved.
As global leaders rally for a greener future, Singapore could play a key role in turning partnerships and potential into progress.
And for more on Singapore's role in helping to decarbonize Asia, I'm now joined by Sue-Ern from the International Energy Agency Regional Cooperation Centre, based in Singapore. Ms. Tan, welcome to the programme.
Good evening.
Good evening. So take us through what Singapore has been doing so far to help Asia rely less on fossil fuels like coal and petrol.
So there's three key things that Singapore is doing to drive the decarbonisation agenda in the region. So firstly, along with the other ASEAN countries, it's working on regional power trade and the ASEAN power grid. So this is very important. Interconnected power grids between the countries in ASEAN will allow the region to help balance the energy demand and supply, which in turn helps to ensure secure and reliable electricity. Secondly, Singapore has set a target for renewable or low emissions electricity imports. This is a really important demand signal for countries in neighbouring countries to start to build the renewable projects in order to meet that target. And then finally, Singapore is very much a finance hub for the region. So it's really key because the IEA projects that we would need over $190 billion by 2035. That's 5 times more than the current level in clean energy investments in this region in order to meet the climate goals. So the Singapore government, by launching an initiative like FAST-P, which is a blended finance initiative looking to raise $5 billion between public and private capital in order to de-risk sort of marginable bankable green projects, is a really key initiative.
Yeah, we would all also agree that collaboration is key when it comes to driving this green transition, isn't it? Why is it important for Singapore to share its expertise?
I think it's a very key thing for leadership to be shown more generally. So one of the key things, for example, in the current uncertain geopolitical climate that we're facing is a need for cooperation and collaboration to be really critical. 2 weeks ago, the IEA co-hosted with the UK government the first global summit on the future of energy security, at which we had 60 government leaders present, including Singapore from this region, Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam, Thailand, and 50 world energy companies. And what they were looking at was how do we reassess and reframe energy security in such a rapidly transforming world. And one of the key agreements out of that from the leaders was the need for cooperation, resolve, and leadership. It's such a critical time for that. There was a recognition that the solutions that we need in the current uncertainty and for an energy security point of view, whether it's technical, whether it's regulatory, whether it's financial, will be more effective if pursued together.
Yeah.
That cooperation and collaboration is key.
So we're doing all this great work, but remind us again, where does Singapore stand when it comes to the decarbonizing journey?
So I think Singapore has done one of the very important things, which is recognizing the need to diversify its energy supply, and that's going to be critical. So currently, Singapore's electricity supply is 95% from gas, a fossil fuel. But as I've said before, the Singapore government is looking to, by setting a target to import low emissions electricity is a key step. It's investigating the role of hydrogen and ammonia. And as announced in the Singapore budget of 2025, the government is also assessing the potential role for suitable nuclear technologies.
And earlier we were talking about Ecosperity Week. You're very busy this week. That's happening till the 8th of May, and this event looks at where Asia stands. We've just 5 years to go to achieve the global target of 45% reduction in emissions. Take us through how platforms like Ecosperity Week help to support such visions.
I think that's a really important initiative that's being held annually through Ecosperity Week. So I think one of the key things is it brings together global leaders to Singapore to really focus on a discussion on how to address that challenge in this region. And that's a very nice, important focus. So it will look at how to mobilize and catalyze finance, how do we accelerate low emissions technologies and innovation, and then really important, going back to your earlier point, how do we build those cross-sector industry partnerships, that collaboration, in order to drive that decarbonisation? So we'll hear from a lot of leaders, both from the Singapore government and the other Southeast Asia countries, as well as global leaders from the UK government, for example, as well as then deep dives into each of those topics. You know, what is the role of philanthropy? How do clean tech, companies and these entrepreneurs drive part of that agenda that's needed? How do we actually address the very specific finance challenges in this region? So it promises to be a very interesting and exciting week. And the IEA is very much looking forward to being part of it.
I'm very sure of that. So we've already established that clean energy is key, but affordability, that remains a hurdle, right? How can we make low carbon energy solutions more affordable for the evolving needs of a fast-growing Asia?
So I think a couple of things that need to be focused on. So firstly, it's how do we get more finance into this very important area? And that will be one of the key discussions about unlocking that level of, most of which will come from the private sector. How do we unlock and address those barriers so that we can encourage more private sector investment into this very important area? The other one is working with governments on ensuring that there's actually the policy and regulatory framework that encourages more of these low carbon technologies to come into play. So I'll just give you two specific examples. One is how can governments reduce the complexity in permitting processes? So in other words, how is it easier for project developers to get access to land, to deal with licensing? Because this will help them to actually build the projects on the ground in an easier and quicker fashion, and the supporting grid infrastructure. So that's one example. Another example from a government policy regulatory point of view is how can they help create the demand for low emissions fuels? Because this is what will unlock the investments and incentivize private sector to actually start to use those low emissions fuels when they can see that there is a requirement to do so.
All right, interesting perspectives. Ms. Tan, thank you so much for coming in tonight.
Thank you very much.
And have a good event at Ecosperity. That was Tan Sue-Ern from the International Energy Agency Regional Cooperation Centre.